Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and we are here with our Copic markers for this particular video. I will be talking about Copics specifically. Of course there are other alcohol based markers on the market, and I know that more recently the Ohuhu brand have become really popular. I am going to try and stick to the specifics of the Copics because it's kind of the point of the video, but I am aware there's been a market shift in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. Copics, particularly the Copic sketch markers, which is what I have, were the industry standard for alcohol markers, and this was mainly due to the fact that the brush nib on these was unrivaled, but also it was one of the very few alcohol markers available that were refillable. Times have changed, things have moved on, and Copics in my opinion have become a very expensive option. I am not a huge marker user, so I would love to hear from you in the comments if you have a favourite marker brand and how you think that compares to Copics. So you can get started down in the comments right away. So first things first, talking about the range of pens themselves, there are 3 different types of Copic markers, this being the Copic sketch. There is also the classic Copics, which has a square barrel. They look a little bit like this. And there's also a Copic chow marker, which is slightly smaller and it has a round barrel. And you can see this one's oval. The classics are square. So the similarities between the 3 is that they are all twin tip markers and they can all be refilled using the Copic refills that you can buy. They all use the same inks, and that the nibs are replaceable as well. So you really do, once you've got this carcass here, you can keep it forever and ever. You can just keep changing bits out. And they also use the same colour codes, obviously, because you're using the same ink. So it doesn't matter whether you have some of the Copic sketch and some of the Copic chow markers. Because they're using the same ink across all the range, they will all have the same colour codes on the end like this. So there is an actual code and then there is a colour name underneath it as well. That's pretty much where the similarities end. So I'll talk about the 2 other types before I get on to the sketch markers, because as I say, that these are the ones that I have. So the Copic chow markers, they look a little bit like this. They are the smallest of the markers, and when I say smallest, the barrel size and the volume of ink is the smallest. They're also the cheapest markers as well. On their twin tip, they have the same as the Copic sketch markers. They have this beautiful and well-renowned soft brush tip. And on the opposite end, they have what I would say is a small chisel tip, but it is the same size as the Copic sketch markers. To buy them initially, they are cheaper because they are smaller, but they also come in the smallest colour range as well. The last time I checked, there was 180 colours available in the Copic chow markers. If we come to the classic markers, these ones with the square barrels, again twin tipped as I mentioned, but these ones have a chisel tip that looks like this, and then they have a little bullet nib on the other end as well. Which is better for sort of precision markering. I have this one specifically. This is actually a blank. I bought it empty and I fill this with blending solution so I can use it to blend out little sections of my artwork as I go. So because of the shape of the barrel, this holds a lot more ink, and this range comes in just over 200 colours available. So really good, especially if you're not into brush tips. They're a great way forward. I find them quite comfortable to hold. I quite like square markers, but again, I suppose that's a preference thing. Moving on to the Copic sketch markers. Like the chow, we have this lovely, and it is a very soft, it's a bendy nib. Also refillable, doesn't hold quite as much ink as the classic because of this oval shape, but we also have this chisel nib on the other end as well. So what's the advantage of having the sketch markers over the other ones? This comes in the biggest range of colours. Again, the last time I checked it was over 350 colours, of which I think I have about 200. Which is more than enough, by the way. I think these ones became the most popular just because of the brush tip and the much larger barrel capacity than the chow markers, plus that full colour range. If you are skilled with your alcohol markers, you could probably Copic. Oh goodness me, terrible joke and we're only 5 minutes in. You could probably cope fine with the chow markers because you can layer and blend, which I'll demonstrate in just a minute. There is the ability to mix those colours If you're like me and you just like to fling everything down when it comes to markers, then the Copic sketch markers are the perfect option. When it comes to the cost of these and also the cost of the replacement parts, it does very much depend on where in the world you are and whether or not you're buying in bulk. But I just wanted to show you the some of the replacement stuff you can get. So you can buy these in bulk. This one was a pack of 3 and this is a replacement brush nib, and it tells you on it that it fits both the sketch and the chow markers. These are really easy to get hold of and they're not that expensive. When it comes to the ink refills as well, again, I found the fluctuation in prices wild depending on where you are and what you're looking at. I'm going to put some average figures for prices in the UK here. If it's something that you're interested in, it's best to do your research. So this is an old style Copic refill. These are sort of being phased out now, but the idea is that you just match up the colour code and you pull out the nib of your pen, and these have got a really long thin nozzle on them, and you poke that down in the pen and squish it in and fill it up. There is a like a measurement marker on the side. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. If I just hold this up here, there is a measurement here so that you know how much you're actually putting in, and it helps you to not overfill your markers. Then your refills look a little bit like this, and same thing, much more readable. That measuring scale it is in millilitres, is down the side there, and it's a bit easier to read on the newer ones as well, but they are smaller and you can see that quite clearly. So there was a bit of dissonance about the cost, because when they brought these new ones out they weren't much cheaper than the old ones, which had a lot more ink in them. In this economy there's not really much we can say. And just to show you this as well, the nozzle's a lot longer and skinnier on these. I find this a bit easier to use, and you're less likely to overfill your markers with this, just because it's a bit more sort of dainty and delicate, and you can get it right down into the barrel. The other thing that you can do as well, which is quite handy, is you can use this like a dropper. So if you're just if you're not keen on squeezing into the barrel of your marker, or you don't know how much ink is actually left, you can take the top off and you can just drip this onto the nib, and I suggest doing this on the chisel end, and you can leave the marker sitting upright just to help that ink filter down. Just do that for a couple of hours. So if you wanted to take the softly approach, that's a way to do it. So moving on to talking about the colour codes, they're fairly self-explanatory. So you have them in basic colour groups. So if I just lift the first couple at this end here, we have the grey colours are probably the most unique. These are split into 3 categories. So we have N, which stands for neutral, W, which stands for warm, and C, which stands for cool. And the numbering system works the same way for all the colour groups. The lower the number, the less saturated or paler the colour is, and the higher the number, the more saturated and darker it is. So you can see there N3 and C6, and they do try to match the cap colour on the end here up as best they can. I don't find it to be completely reliable, but when you've got your markers all stacked up, it's pretty easy to pick out what you are looking for. So some of the other colour groups as well, we have the Y and the YR group. So Y is for yellow, YR is for yellow red, so you know, kind of heading into like the oranges and things there. The R group, which is for the reds, and we have RV, which is for the red violets, so that's you heading into pink. And we have V and BV, so violets and then your blue violets. And we have B for your blues, and then BG for your blue-green colours, so your turquoisey colours. We have the G colours, so that's your greens obviously. And then we have E colours, which I'm assuming stands for earth tones. I've never actually bothered to look it up. And this will cover all your earth tones through from very pale ones that you could use for sort of very, very light flesh tones all the way through to really deep rich browns. Other outliers include black, which doesn't have a letter, it's just a number. There are more than one black. I think there's 2 blacks. They have the fluorescent ones, which have their own little funky codes, and the colourless blender is just a simple 0. I just want to talk a little bit about the numbering now that we've talked about the colour groups, which is the letters. There's at least 2 numbers on each of the markers. So the first digit represents how saturated stroke transparent each colour is. So if you have a first digit which is a 0, then that is a very desaturated colour, and therefore you'll have more sort of transparency with those. If you have a higher digit, these go up to 9, so this number 6 here is going to be more saturated, therefore less transparent. The second number or subsequent numbers denote the brightness of the colour, again going from 0 to 9. So if you had something that was a 0, 0 or a 0, 1, that is going to be a very pale desaturated colour, and you would be able to see anything that you've put down underneath would show through, which would be pencil lines or darker colours. If you have a high number like a 9 here, that's going to give you your darker colours, and by proxy you might not be able to see things showing through quite as much as well. When it comes to storage, I've found that this has worked really well, and this was just a cheap storage unit that had these rainbow drawers in it that I found in like my local sort of houseware store. So all I did was take the drawers out and store the markers in the gaps. So that's my preferred method. I like to be able to see all the colours. It's very visual, and when you're walking around the cave, like, they're right there, you can't miss them. So the way that I've stored them, first of all, storing your twin tip markers horizontally is what you want to do, because it stops either end drying out. If you have them standing on an end for any length of time, the nib on this side will be very dry, and you'll have to let them sit upside down if you want to use that, if it's not something you're using every day. So horizontal storage like this is great. When it comes to grouping the colours, this might seem a bit backwards, but there's method in my madness, I promise. I've deliberately separated the B colours from the BG colours, like they're on different like sections of the shelves, and it's just so they're easier to pick out. If I had the Bs and the BGs together, I would just be like a sea of bluish colours, and it would take me longer to find the colour I'm looking for. So I've deliberately split them off, so you can see that I've got the special colours, so that's the fluorescent colours and my blacks and my little colourless blender there. So that's all the B group there. And then here I've got BG and YG, so they're very different, and you can see there's the definite split there, so it's just easier to grab the one you're looking for. And the more markers you have, the more time you spend looking for the one that you want. And this is all earth tones just because it's quite a big group. It's got a whole shelf to itself. And then I've got my BV colours and my G colours. Again, everybody's different. A lot of the marker sets now come with storage bags. I would be really interested to see how you all store your markers as well. And in these little drawers here, I've got space for my extra nibs, etc. I do have a separate basket. That's all my Copic refills down there. Obviously, especially the old refills, these chunkier ones, they take up a lot of space, and I wouldn't have been able to fit them all in here. So I've had to split them off, and they've got a little special basket all of their own. I've chosen the blues just because they're easy to see on the camera here, and I'm going to give you a little demonstration of this in just a second. Before we go into actually putting marks on paper with these, I want to talk about the actual paper. Now, the last time I did one of these videos, someone commented on the fact that I only mentioned a few brands of paper. I'm simply showing you here the ones that I have used and what my preferences are. Obviously, this list is not exhaustive. And really, when it comes to using alcohol markers, I'm only looking for two things. The first thing is smooth paper, because that is going to allow you to lay down really smooth blocks of colour and preserve your brush nib in particular. Obviously they're made of fibres, and if you rub them on a rough surface they will start to splay much more quickly than if you use a smooth surface. Secondly, the ability to prevent the marker bleeding through. All alcohol markers will soak through the paper. Paper just absorbs it like a sponge. So we want to go for papers that are bleed proof. Now, people get confused with this, so I just want to show you what I'm talking about here. So the first example I'm going to give you here is the Winsor & Newton Pro Marker paper. So this is specifically designed for markers, as are most of the papers I'm going to show you. And this markets itself and shows you on the front that it is bleed proof. Now, the definition of bleed proof paper is paper that you can put down marker onto and it will not leave a mark on the following page. It does not mean that it won't soak through to the other side. You will see it on the other side. So people get that confused. So bleed proof paper is any paper that is safe to use with marker, and it means it won't tarnish the next available page that you have. You do get certain brands of paper, and one of my favourite is the render paper, and it says on it no show through paper. And what that is specifically stating is that when you have marker down on one side, when you turn it over you can use the other side of the paper as well. You will not see that on the other side, whereas you will see ghosting on normal bleed proof paper of where your marker has been. So one basically has a protective layer to stop it damaging your next page. The other one means you cannot see the ink on the other side. So you can see I tested this out extensively with lots of different colours, and there was no problems at all. There are quite a few versions of this. The render paper is one of the more popular ones. The one that I like as well that's a little bit cheaper is the Sonic Wallpaper by ArtSpace. It does the same job, and it says on it as well, never worry about ink bleeding onto the other side. So if you want to use it in a sketchbook format, this is the best way to go if you want to use both sides of your paper. Just jumping back to the Pro Marker paper, this is my this sort of practice paper. It is very, very thin. It is only 75 GSM or £20, and it's almost like tracing paper. It's really cheap, and that's one thing you will find. Good marker paper can become quite expensive. This is really, really affordable, and it's great for rough sketches and anything else that you want to kind of practice instead of using your really expensive precious marker paper. Another popular, more premium choice for loose sheets is the Express It blending card. So this was designed with Copic markers in mind. This paper is quite expensive, and you would tend to use that for maybe something a little bit more finished. Other good options if you're just messing about or you're just fussing about. Bristol paper is always good if you're not bothered about the soak through or the bleed through. Bristol paper's great. If you get the smooth version, this is bright white, and it does a mighty fine job of having that nice smooth texture that or lack thereof that we're looking for. Or something like the something like generic marker sketch pads. So the Art Gecko one here, this was marketed with Scrawlrbox because they had Poscas in it. But again, Posca is still a marker, albeit a paint marker, so you're still looking at that lovely smooth, like there's no texture there at all. So anything like that will do. So I do also have an actual Copic sketchbook here, and the paper does feel very premium. It is very nice indeed. So there are lots and lots of options. The main thing for me is it's usually the price that's prohibitive. And as someone who doesn't use markers an awful lot, I think I've got enough marker paper there to last me a lifetime, honestly. So just while I'm explaining some of the attributes of the pens themselves, I'm going to show you on a paper that is designed to block the colour from appearing on the other side, but also ones that are just bleed proof. I am quite a fan of this Pro Marker paper. So if we just talk about if we go back to the numbering system for a minute here, I have B00, otherwise known as Boo, because that's what we call it. Not only is this very desaturated and very transparent, because the first digit is 0, but the brightness is also 0, so it's very pale colour. So when I put this down, a lovely delicate pastel shades, so beautiful. And you can see how smoothly that has gone down on the paper because that's what it's made for. So I'm going to do the same here, and we will just let that dry and do its thing. So the thing about alcohol markers is, because they're alcohol based, they are quite easy to blend when the ink is still wet. If you have very absorbent paper, it can become difficult to blend them on the paper. You can use a colourless blender to help along with that. The ink that's used in them is dye based, so it's not particularly light fast, and that tends to be true of all alcohol markers. As I mentioned earlier, if you're using any other paper than marker paper, they will soak through. So I'm thinking more along the lines of if you like to colour in colouring books, it will destroy the page on the opposite side if it's a double-sided book. If it's single-sided pages, that's great, but I always make sure to tuck something in behind so that it doesn't soak through onto the subsequent design on the next page. There's very few colouring books that are made of marker paper. Right, so here is B14, so that then gives us a step up in the transparency, and we have 4 as the second digit, so we're coming closer to the middle of the road territory for brightness. So you can see there's quite a big difference there. And to give you something a little bit further up the scale, I have B69, which is called Stratospheric Blue, a fantastic name for that. So you can really see the difference there because of the higher numbers. And that's really vibrant, vivid colour, which is denoted by the number 9. And the number 6 obviously indicates that it is a much higher saturation than these paler counterparts. So if I just show you the back of this paper now, this is the Winsor & Newton paper. You can see the colours through, but there is not a jot of anything on the page underneath. So basically there's a coating on the back of here that stops that soaking through any further, but it doesn't disguise it, as we discussed. But if I show you this render paper now, there is nothing on the back, so we can draw on both sides of this paper with our Copic markers. So when it comes to actual techniques for using these markers, we have our chisel tip, which is great for straight edges, and the very edge of the chisel tip for getting into extremely small spaces. So we have this sort of duality of, well, I would say is that honestly is the best of both worlds with a chisel tip and a brush nib, and it's why a lot of dual tip markers have settled for this. I personally feel like I've got a lot more control with the brush tip, but it's probably because I'm used to painting, and I feel that I can do a lot more. But the brush tip on these is particularly bendy, but not bendy enough that you're going to lose control of it. But you can get such a great range of lines and shapes with this, and it just takes a bit of practice. So one of the things and one of the reasons we like markers is for nice flat colour. And again, this is just my personal experience. I am not particularly, I am not a marker monster, but what works for me is getting that flat colour is a combination of your stroke pattern and also layering up your colour as well. And this is one of the really nice things about alcohol markers. We can build up colour by layering up the same way as you would with pencils. So if I just go back over this section here, and I'll only take it halfway down so that we've got a comparison, and I'll let that dry, but you can see the difference already between those two sections. So you have room to play within each individual colour. You don't need a whole bunch of colours to get some variation in tone and shade in whatever it is you're doing. But when it actually comes to laying down the colour, I've found that the best way to do it is to move in relatively quick and smooth motions and just keep going. And what you're doing is you're joining up these strokes while the ink is still wet on the paper, and that gives it a chance to just sort of smoosh together. So you can see once I got going there's a few lines there, but this end is very smooth and uniform. Extremely flat colour here once I got my brush going, but it just took me a minute to get going. And you can see up here the difference in the two. Again, if I go another layer as well, I remember being asked the question, how do you know when to stop? There will come a point where the ink is taking a long time to dry and it almost looks as if it's sitting on top of the paper, and that's basically because there's no more absorption left in the paper. So if your layers are taking a substantial amount of time to dry, then you know you've gone as far as you can go, and that varies from paper to paper. But also something else you might see is you might start to see feathering around the edges, you know, where the ink's just blooming out a wee bit, and that's because it's seeking somewhere else so that it can soak into the paper. So that's 3 layers of marker versus 1, so you can see the difference there, and you can use that obviously to your advantage when you are working with your drawings. So what about the ability to blend? You can blend alcohol markers into each other, and there's loads of marker artists out there that have really good YouTube videos on them. I remember years and years ago, Draw with Jazza did a really good one, a really good demonstration of it using Copics. That was when he was very much into Copics. But I want to give you a little demonstration here. So I have got YR23, which is yellow ochre, and I've got R29, which is a lipstick red. And a bit like we did here, if you want to get a good blend, you need to work on the colours while they're still wet, because that is the easiest way to get them to blend together. So it's a good idea to have your lids off ready to go. And again, if you're using a decent marker paper, it shouldn't be too much hassle. But we just start off basically by sticking the 2 colours side by side and then just working them in together. So you can see there I've gone from a red transition into a sort of orangey section and then into the ochre itself. So that's a technique. It takes a wee bit of practice to get 100%, but it's something that you know can be worked at and can definitely be done. I tend to use a combination of both, of blending and layering. I don't use one or other specifically. Again, because you're not always going to be blending in a straight line. You might be working in a really small area or a curved area. So I find jumping between the 2 techniques works best for me. Again, there'll be far more proficient people out there that are doing a much better job of that than I will. But you can see how easily that's blended out. Like, it wasn't a big deal at all, as long as you're quick with it. Your other option as well is to grab a colourless blender. This is basically just alcohol, because alcohol dilutes alcohol, and that's a phrase that us Scots stick to just generally as a nation. But if you're not in for that, you can grab one of these colourless blenders, and basically it will just start to lift the colour and help smoosh it together. So it is basically just a Copic marker without any pigment in it. So let's grab that and see what happens when I put it across the top here. So can you see that light section starting to form in the middle? That's because the alcohol in the marker is diluting the pigment out. And I can actually spread that out just to demonstrate for you. So that is a good way to do it. When you've done that, always make sure you clean off your nib. Again, don't panic, this won't stain, it will come off. You've just got to make sure that you keep going and clean it off. Just make sure that's there and that there's no residue on it, ready for the next time. You don't have to faff about it the next time. But you can see there that's getting lighter and lighter. The last thing that we can do that I talked about was transparency, and we can use that to our advantage as well. So we can use that to mix colours together and create new colours. So I won't use the ochre this time, let's use a bit more of a yellow. So I've got Y19, so this is a straight yellow colour, this is Napoli yellow. But if I mix together that with the lipstick red, and if we use the more opaque, I use that term loosely, opaque colour, so that's going to be our lipstick red because it's a 2 in that first digit, whereas our yellow is a 1. So if we put that down first, and then we put the yellow down top, the yellow is more transparent, you're able to see that red underneath. So you need to be aware of that when you're layering up your colours. If you want something to show through, make sure you use one with a higher first digit underneath. As you can see, I've put this down, it's still wet, so that's mixed together, and I've actually created an orange, so you can mix these on your actual paper. But you can see that's the yellow colour normally, like it is actually yellow. Again, if you're going to do that, just make sure you clean off the excess, because obviously those two colours will mix together on your nib and you don't want that to contaminate any future work. But there you go, that's a lovely, it really is a lovely shade of yellow. I really like that one. So a couple of ways to use things. Very flexible, and obviously the colours are so bright, and most people that I know that use markers will do their designs in marker and then scan them in because of the lack of light fastness with the pigments. But you will have unrivaled colour with this that is just going to come up and smack you in the mouth, and that's kind of the fun part of markers. So just to round this video off, I wanted to show you some of my favourite Copic colours that I use and why I use them. So with the greys, W1 is a shade that I use all the time. I like it for very light shadow work, or just to change the tone of a colour, because it's very transparent. If you put a sweep of that over something, it alters it slightly, but it doesn't take away from the colour underneath. That's really what you're supposed to use the neutral shades for, but I tend to always want to warm things up, I don't know why. So W1's a big favourite of mine. Moving on to the greens, my personal favourite is Willow. It's a lovely sort of chill colour, and it's a nice sort of halfway house between the very green greens and the very muted shades of green. Into the blues, I'm a big fan of this smoky blue, just because I think it's a really gorgeous colour, and also Antwerp blue as well. I do like a good indigo colour, and this is one that you can layer up, and the same goes for the Prussian blue underneath, and you're almost at black without going as far as having to come all the way up to B99. Moving into the E colours, this is my favourite colour group. I tend to draw things from nature, and this is all you need. When people think of markers, they often think of bright and brash colours, really sort of fun, bold artworks. And the range of the E colours just basically puts that to rest. So again, you can use these in tandem and layer them up, or use them around some of the brighter colours. But everything that you need if you are if you're into landscapes, or even if you like to draw animals like I do, everything that you could possibly need in this section. And this is the colour group naturally that I use the most when I do use markers. This BV Pale Thistle colour is just, chef's kiss. I like it very much. With over 350 colours though, you'd be very hard pushed to not find something to suit you. So now that everything's dried, you can see here on the back. So what about the ways I actually use marker when it comes to, down to brass tacks, actually doing some art? There's two ways that I usually use markers. And the first one is contained in this little Copic sketchbook. I exclusively draw characters from computer games in here, and markers lend themselves really well to this because a lot of them are really bright coloured. So just to give you some examples, here's Mario, and some of you will be familiar with this little chap as well. And some of these are quite old, and more recently, well I say more recently, that was last year, there is Kirby. When I'm talking about the markers not being light fast, there was one in particular, let me see here. So Fallout Vault Boy, this is faded so much. That was really vibrant. And also, if any of you ever played Day of the Tentacle, the purple has faded out really quickly as well. Now bear in mind, this is a sketchbook. It's not exposed to light at all. This is literally closed all the time. So you will get fade with your markers, which is a shame. And you can really see it where I've used a darker marker to put in the shadow. Obviously these were picked from the same colour group and they just don't look the same at all because we've lost so much of the colour. So we shall wait and see how long it takes Kirby to lose his colour as well. The second way is in colouring books. I don't know why, but particularly in Hannah Lynn images, I like to use markers. And what I like to do is I like to use the markers to put down a base layer of colour, and then I like to use coloured pencil over the top to add in some detail. And this was done a long time. This was done in 2019, so this was a very long time ago. But if I just zoom right in, the advantages of using marker for a base layer is, number one, you can cover a large area very quickly. So if you have sections where there's a lot of open space, it means you can get that nice uniform layer of colour down pretty quickly. And you can see that with the globe here. And also I wanted her to have very smooth skin, so that is an excellent choice for that. But the other thing as well is you can use coloured pencil over the top, no problem, which you can see for texture and things I have done quite substantially, and it gives you a really nice finished image, but you can do it a lot quicker than just using pencil alone. So it's a really nice halfway house. When you're doing that, you have to make sure you're using single-sided images. This is one of the Colouring Heaven issues where all the pages are single-sided. Because you can see if you turn over there, this is what happens. And I've actually still got the preventative sheet of paper. You can see where that's soaked through and left, you know, an imprint. So if I hadn't had that in there, this image would have been damaged by that. And that is actually a sheet of the Winsor & Newton marker paper that I was just showing you. I'm such a creature of habit. But it really is, it's a very satisfying way to get some colour down and still be able to get detail into your pictures. Again, if you're working in smaller areas, it might take a while if you're not used to using them to get that sort of technique down and stay within the lines. I would say be careful on the paper that you pick. The Colouring Heaven books are particularly good, but some colouring books that aren't really designed to take ink, you might find you get a bit of bleed and it might, you know, overstep some lines and things. But I can safely guarantee you will be absolutely fine in the Colouring Heaven magazines. So there we go, that's it for today. Not meant to be a comprehensive overview as the supply as a whole, that's not what we're here for. We're here to sort of rediscover things, as is the suggestion in the title. So if you have any hints and tips or recommendations for alcohol markers, I would absolutely love to hear about them down in the comments. As I say, it's not a medium that I work in an awful lot of the time, and I'm sure some of you have much more up-to-date knowledge on it than I do. I am going to do a second video and do some artwork, so I am going to jump into this little Copic sketchbook and I will be doing a video game character for the second video. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today, guys. Maybe you've learned something, maybe it's inspired you to go and look some stuff up, or maybe it's just inspired you to go and doodle something. Either way, anyway, I'm happy. It's been nice to dig all of these out and show them some love. So I hope you'll join me for that second video, which will be out in a week or so. And I'll see you back in the cave really soon for either another video or a live stream, whichever comes first. So have a great day, everyone, and bye-bye for now.